Hello, 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 everyone. I hope you are doing well. You are live. We are live here on the Transatlantic Call-In Show, and we have the amazing Riverboat Jack on here as the first actual show as you and as an official host on the Transatlantic Call-In Show. Woo! How are you
Hello.
doing?
I'm doing great. Well, that's my pre-programmed answer. I live in Minneapolis, so you can imagine a little bit less
Oof.
than great at the moment, overall, but I'm gonna say great because that's the expected answer.
Yes, expected answer, unfortunately. And yeah, my to stay safe out there is an absolute military occupation going down. It's like more ICE agents than the actual police force of the whole state, right? Is happening
Yeah,
essentially.
it's like 5 times the size of our local police force.
Yeah, that's awful. Well, on that note, we're happy that you are here on the Transatlantic Call-In Show. And as you know, make sure to call in. Our phone number is 720-619-2288. And you can also call in on the web link in the description. Also, if you are somebody really wanting to know more about trans issues, or you have an idea that trans people shouldn't exist, or that trans people don't deserve rights, or you just want to know why trans people exist at all, we'll put you in the priority line to make sure that you get in and aren't on hold for very long. And we will try to be nice. Where if you're in good faith, we try not to get too spicy, but sometimes we have to do what we have to do to make that happen. So yeah, so let's go ahead and get into our last week's poll. So our last week's poll was, do you support the state trust fund bills for hospitals at risk over gender affirming care? 90% of you said yes, and 10% said no. Jack, what do you think?
I don't know a ton about this issue, but generally, can you kinda give me an overview? Like, the trust funds are in case, like, states get smacked by the federal government?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
So it's a new bill. It's a new bill idea to basically create money on the side to protect when if a hospital loses any type of funding for providing gender affirming care.
Honestly, that seems like something hospitals should already have for a wide variety of other reasons too. Like, that just seems like common sense to me. So, yes.
Great. Yeah, I also agree. And it looks like 90% also agrees. And if you are part of that 10% that didn't want to agree to that, make sure you call in and talk to us about it. So we'll go ahead and um, we'll wait. We're going to see if some more calls come in, and then we will go from there. But just a little update on myself. Just to let you everybody know, I am running a campaign for office. So I'm running for county council at large, which is great in Montgomery County in Maryland, and we have a incredible amount of donations that came in yesterday. We hit a very important goal to hit public matching. So if you haven't donated yet to the campaign and you live in the United States and are a legal resident of the United States, you can donate to the campaign. So we'll be putting in the description on how to do that on the Zerba link. And that will be very helpful because I'm going to be doing this until we win. That's how it's going to go. Wonderful. And let's go ahead and preview this week's poll, and then we'll go ahead and take our first call. So this week's poll is, should states be able to ban trans girls from sports teams even if they never had male puberty? So we'll let everybody have a chance to answer that question, and then we'll go ahead and just take our first call and go ahead and get started. So I will go ahead and bring in Asher, he, him pronouns from Massachusetts. Asher, you are on the line and tell us about it. What would you like to talk about?
Um, hi, I'm Asher. I am a trans man, but I haven't done any medical transition, and I'm finding lately that my gender dysphoria is through the roof at the same time as my oldest kid is suddenly asking for to start tea. And I'm kind of afraid to do either, even though we've moved forward with puberty blockers. I'm just kind of looking for a little advice.
Yeah. Um, so are you saying you are worried about having your child start puberty blockers? Was that I just want to make sure I got that right.
No, I'm worried about the state violence that's happening, even in
Mm.
Massachusetts. I'm nervous about having any of us on any kind of a list.
Oh, I
Mm.
see. I see.
Yeah.
Uh, go ahead, Jack, if you want to go to start
I
with this.
I guess, like, first of all, like, I totally sympathize. Like, it is scary right now out there. Um, and I think that part of it is, um, obviously state level suppression is really, really a huge concern. Um, and I I I just also wanna say, I think it's something that I think all trans people struggle with right now, like whether or not they have been on hormones, whether or not they have been visible online or in public, like the degree of visibility that we want to invite on ourselves, it gives all of us pause regardless of where we're at in our transition journey. And I think um one of the awful parts of this administration is that regardless of what we do, we're probably going to wind up on some kind of list somewhere. Um, like I, being in Minneapolis right now, if an ICE officer wants to add you to their database, they just take a picture of you and like you're there, whether you want to be or not, whether you're a bystander who just happened to be there or someone who's been actively following them around. And um, ultimately, I guess my take on this is we got to do what's best for ourselves first, and then move from there. Um, but it doesn't make it less scary, and that's part of the hard part.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I will just say this because it really becomes a question about your own mental well-being, right? We know from the studies that transition is incredibly good for the mental well-being of people who transition. In fact, 97% of folks who have transitioned, even just at all, have a somewhat or a large amount of life satisfaction after transition. So even with the situation that is going on, people still report being more satisfied with life with transition, even with the fact that it is incredibly difficult right now. So think about that when you're making these decisions about your own quality of life, because sometimes it can be just as bad to not transition for these reasons on the what if than it is for, to go ahead and do it and deal with the current social environment. Um, However, I'll also say this as well, that safety is paramount. We want everybody to be safe. And if there was a situation where you were just completely unsafe and unsure, then there is that. I will say I don't live in Massachusetts, but I do know a lot of people in Massachusetts. There is a pretty strong support network in Massachusetts of trans people that I know. I know a lot of trans leaders who are in Massachusetts, as well as very strong political influences at the national level that represent Massachusetts that are going to be fighting for your best interest. So it's those type of things you got to consider. And of course, I can't tell you to do what you feel you need to do, but just know that your life satisfaction is critically important to yourself and you need to weigh that in your own thoughts. But Asher, I'd love for you to respond.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm struggling partially because my kid's dysphoria is kind of triggering mine in that we're both
Mhm.
AFAB and kind of going the same direction. One question I have, at least as far as puberty blockers, I don't know if either of you can answer. Is there an option other than monthly shots? Because I know my kid at least is scared of needles, like to the point of having trouble with vaccines. We have to, um, we need to do that very carefully. um,
Like, I'm
so,
not too familiar with, testosterone personally, and it's definitely a question you're gonna have to ask your medical provider on that because I'm not
yeah.
familiar with the, pathways of receiving testosterone.
And
I mean, I'm just strictly
Yeah.
talking the puberty blockers, but if you don't know, then that's you don't know. We
Yeah.
will ask as
I
we get closer to that medically.
I will say
We
that
found someone.
Yeah.
I think there are a couple of different alternatives that, again, talk with your medical provider, but I know injections are the most common, and that's followed up by more recently, they've come up with implants that can do some of that
Hmm.
same like puberty suppression work. I think there might be a handful of options when it comes to pill form, but I'm not. Again, it'd be a question you'd have to talk to your provider
Yeah,
about.
for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And,
Do either of you have
Mhm. Go ahead, please.
Sorry, do either of you have any experience just dealing with multiple people in the household who are struggling with the same thing? I mean, I'm talking about myself and my oldest, but all four of us in the household are in some way trans or non-binary, and it's just kind of bounce off each other.
I don't have any personal experience with multiple trans people in the same household, but I do have a lot of friends that do, and I think that there's a lot of solidarity inside of that where you kind of commiserate with each other and kind of like, kind of that shared lived experience can be very powerful. Rather than you kind of suffering alone, you have like people with you to help you kind of navigate these conversations. So I've heard good things, and then there are folks that do it with supportive households as well, that are trans and cis mixed households. So yeah, I would I honestly personally I always suggest to folks who are transitioning early in transition or just living as trans people in general to find a local community of people. I know in Massachusetts, there's a
Mhm.
lot of local communities that are trans, that you're going to be able to kind of connect with to be able to ask these questions of people who already live as trans people in Massachusetts. So you can kind of have a better lay of the land of what the lived reality is on the day-to-day experience of being trans in public in Massachusetts. It's really important information. I did that myself when I was first coming out as trans when I was in San Diego, and there was a large network of people there that I was able to communicate with to kind of get what it was going to be like, and I was able to get a good approximation of what that would be like.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
For my part, I would just add like there's a lot of solidarity there, like Josie was saying, and um, like also I'm just gonna throw out there it. I feel in my experience it can be easier to potentially deal with like feelings of like more negative feelings when you're taking action to get towards your goals. When you're feeling really stuck, that can sometimes exacerbate struggles. Seeing other trans
mhm.
folks flourish while you feel kind of like bolted down, and when you have like even just a little bit of momentum towards your goal, I think that that can make all of those feelings a lot easier to deal with.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
that makes sense. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
and
I've
and
not a
honestly, we are in a tough time in American history, that is for sure when it comes to trans people, but there are more of us that are open than there ever has been in American history. And to take the words of the late great Miss Major, she says we're still fucking here. And in her philosophy and theory of change was our existence is our most powerful weapon. And the opposition wants us to be afraid and go back into the closet and not be public. They think that they can scare us into submission. And it's if you have the safety to be able to live openly and freely, it is our best thing we can do for our community and what it looks like to fight back, and that is to thrive. And even in the worst case situations, for us to be able to be happy as ourselves is the best thing we can do. Trans joy is the best weapon. And that's everybody has that option. And that's what we can do. Or you can, support the folks that are, and whatever fits your best lifestyle is the way that you should move forward in your life.
That makes a lot of sense, and I think that's what I needed to hear.
Yeah,
And I've
absolutely.
been feeling so stuck, and I mean, I've sort of come out at work, but nobody remembers to use my pronouns correctly. They just use she, her, and I mean, they're supportive. They've had all the training. They just forget, and I don't know how to remind them.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, just continue being yourself and keep being supportive as a parent. And we're gonna get through this.
Oh,
We are
absolutely will.
approaching the bottom of the barrel. The bottom is close. We're soon to go back up soon enough. And that's my eternal optimism.
Hell
I
yeah.
sure hope you're right,
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
sometimes think you are.
Aw, thank you. I appreciate you. All right. Well, with that, any last words before we let you go?
Just want to say I started my kids doing gender neutral parenting when my youngest was born, and the oldest then came out as non-binary. And if you can do it, it's really, really worth it. They're amazing kids,
Yeah.
and they're so confident in themselves.
Amazing. Well, thank you for being a good parent. You're
Yeah, you
awesome.
sound great.
Yeah. All right,
Thanks.
Asher. Well, have a great rest of your day, okay? And good luck out there. Stay safe.
Thanks. You too.
All right.
Bye.
Bye. All right. Yeah, let's go into the next poll, go into the poll conversation.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So the chat, let me pull that up, said 94% said no, states should not be able to ban trans girls from sport team, even if they've had male puberty. And 7% said yes. And if you are part of that 7% and you haven't called in yet, then don't be a coward. Like, tell us your arguments. Like, I want to know why you believe that they should be able to do that. I think it's a very important conversation, and I think a lot of people are struggling with this question. So we're ready to hear it. We're ready to have that conversation with you.
Also, we don't
Um,
bite. Like
yeah,
it's not scary. You're just talking to us. We're people.
yeah, that's right. We're people. So, Jack, what do you think about this poll?
I mean, I'm not surprised that our audience would go majority no. And I also I agree with them. You know, like I think that states by and large should mind their own business. And uh sports leagues have a long and storied history of like figuring out the rules that they want to enforce for who can participate. And like I'm even open to new ideas about how we organize sports, because sex and gender seems like a pretty arbitrary line when there are weight class is out there, just as like another example of how sports could be like resorted. But um it just seems to me like this is a product of an older world that we've by and large moved beyond. But that's me. What are your thoughts?
I agree as well. States shouldn't be able to ban trans girls from sports. And I also like to broaden the question even more that government shouldn't be doing this. Like, the world is burning down. Our economy is in the trash can. Like, we have, people on the Epstein file list we have that we haven't dealt with yet. We have so many things that we like wars being started for no reason whatsoever. Like it is so awful to me that this is the things that we are talking about when we have rampant criminality, including right now in Minneapolis, with everything that's going on. And this is what we're going
Hmm.
to talk about. We're going to talk about literally the handful of trans girls and trans women that are playing in sports at all. Like, get over yourself, stop scapegoating trans people, and stop using the full force of the government for the most obscure, random ways that actually doesn't help anybody. I can tell you right now, trans girls in sports isn't the reason your grocery prices are higher. Like it's just so frustrating to me that this is the thing that they want to latch on to. And it's just basic fascist bullshit. Like it's what they do. They point at a marginalized community and try to use all their government to forces to make that happen instead of actually dealing with real world issues. And so it really just sets my heart ablaze, and I get so angry when I hear this argument over and over and over. Like even in the Maryland State House right now, they're already ready to put up another bill again to ban trans girls from sports, and it's going to be the same senator that says the same crap every time about how she was a collegiate tennis player, and if she played against boys then she would have never gotten the scholarships to play in her scholastic leagues in college. It's like, lady, like you are playing a hypothetical that doesn't even happen now. Like, and it's just like I've literally been on a hearing. Oh no, I stopped for a second. Okay, but I've literally been on a hearing on a witness panel at the state house in Maryland, trying to tell this woman that she's completely wrong, and she immediately clutched her pearls. Like, how dare you? And she was like, impugn my integrity by saying what you just said. It's like, wow, like get out of here. It's like it's so frustrating, and it just gives conservatives something to do outside of actually do their job. And anyways, I'm on my
Well, I
soapbox.
mean, a counterpoint, the most important thing the highest court in our country has to do right now is not deal with anything else other than whether or not one high schooler should be allowed to play a sport on the basis of who she is.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the most pressing issue. Though where our country's so great and everything's working out so well that they have the full force and mighty government of the United States to deal with this one trans girl in this one school sport
Yeah.
in some state somewhere.
All
Like
your
it's
lives are just so great, just so
yeah,
perfect that this is the issue. We
this
all need to concern ourselves, a country of 300 million people, with
yeah.
whether or not a high schooler plays a sport.
Yeah, exactly. Because, girls' sports are so pivotal in American society. That's where all the money is. Like, I mean, if you want to be a millionaire, be a female athlete. Like go for it. Like be a woman athlete, and then boom, like your life is set in sparkles and gold.
It's all smooth sailing.
It's all smooth sailing. Those boys, they don't even stand a chance against female sports, women's sports. Like it doesn't
God.
happen. Like it's just like, yeah, it's just like it's so bonkers. It's so bonkers. But yeah, so if you disagree, call in. It's funny, Jack, what you'll notice is when the cis folks on the line go on live, they get an endless amount of transphobic people calling in, talking about how we shouldn't exist. But we have an actual show dedicated to having real conversations with real life trans people, but yet not a peep, not a peep. We've owned them so hard that they do not even want to show their faces. So yeah,
Well, they don't like thinking about us as people, Josie. They
that's
they don't
fair.
they don't want to actually interact with a trans person because that would mean recognizing that we have some degree of equal footing compared to them.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Um, great. So let's go ahead. And this question is probably more geared to you, Jack. So we'll go ahead and take Fiona. she, her from Minnesota, and wants to talk about resources in Minnesota for helping the community.
Hell yeah.
Hello, Fiona. You are live on the line. How are you?
Hey, how's it going?
Going well.
Yeah. How
So
are
yeah,
you?
talk to us
My
about it.
my thing. Oh, sorry.
It's
My
okay.
thing is, I live in Austin, Minnesota, and like for instance, we got the Spam Museum to donate to our marginalized people around here, especially with like the increase in ICE raids. And I didn't know if there was anything like in the Twin Cities area or even like Duluth where there's something where we can give like either a donation to or help out the community up there. And I didn't know if you had any suggestions.
In the Twin Cities area, you said, just to sometimes I have an audio
Yes,
processing issue.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there are a bunch of places in the Twin Cities area that could use support. For example, there's the Annex Teen Clinic, which is like an LGBTQ safe space for teens. Regardless of like their circumstances, they can go there and like be safe and like hang out and chill. Um, there are also resources like uh the there's like the Minnesota Transgender Alliance Family Tree Clinic. It's Family Tree Clinic provides like HRT. It's where I got my first HRT here in the Twin Cities. And they are able to offer kind of sliding scale fees based on how people can pay. So people, regardless of income status, can access HRT in the area. Um, there's also like the Minnesota Transgender Health Coalition. There are a lot. Are there any like more like Aliveness Project also works with like HIV folks, positive folks, and like provides free testing for the community. Um, like I
'Cause
can keep
I've
on going.
oh, I'm sorry. Oh,
Yeah.
I've worked with Outfront. They helped me get my name change
Hmm.
in Minnesota, and they're a great group. And I've been donating to them, but I didn't know if there was anything else. I know that sounds a lot better than I'm going through Planned Parenthood. It's really tough to get
Yeah.
any sliding scale. I might actually get into that, so that might be a good thing. But I didn't know if there was anything else we could do, like for volunteering around this area.
Yeah, I have a soft spot for like teens and youth who are struggling because like a lot of younger LGBTQ people are like homeless or housing insecure. And there's another group that's local called The Bridge that offers shelter for homeless and runaway youth, and has specific programs and support networks for LGBTQ kids specifically. Um, there's also for volunteering a group called Queer Space Collective that offers like a youth mentorship type of situation for folks who want to like, kind of give kids like a role model figure to look up to and like hang out with them. Um, there's like a whole lot of really wonderful initiatives. If I can I actually prepared like a list, not specifically for this, but for like a month or two ago, for a friend of mine. And I don't know if there's like a place here that I can share that, but I could just like copy paste it somewhere. There's also, if you're looking for other clinics, there's a place called Red Door, which also provides medical services. Um,
That would save a lot of money because I know Planned Parenthood does scaling, but it's like $200 a visit, even if you need to change your medication. It just sucks.
yeah, no, it is awful. um, let
Yeah.
me see. Is there a way I can share a list, Josie? I don't
If
know.
you
Now,
post the link in
yeah.
Discord, I can post it on in the chat or something for Fiona.
Okay, I have a whole bunch of them. Um, but the major ones, Red Door here and Family Tree Clinic, they're right next to each other on this list I'm sending in our back-end chat.
Great. So Fiona, does that
Oh,
answer your questions?
yep, that answers my question.
Awesome.
Okay.
I do know. I do want to say, keep fighting the fight. I'm the Spam Museum mascot, so I'm rooting for you.
That's
Oh,
awesome.
wow. That's amazing. That's super great.
Wait,
Well, I
Jack, which one of
appreciate
these links
you.
am I posting in chat? There's a lot.
I annex. Sorry, I'll just send the ones that are relevant.
No worries,
I
no
I
worries.
sent the entire list. Annex, Family Tree, Red Door. There you go. There you go. Those three are like the major ones I would say. They're all worthy, but there you go.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. That's going to help
Yeah.
me a lot because I spend so much money on just even changing medication.
Yep. Yep, absolutely. Anything that makes it easier for you. We're happy
Yeah.
that we're able to help. Awesome. Well, have a great rest of your day and stay safe out there. All right.
Oh, you
Bye.
too. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. All right.
Sorry if I was
Great.
just info dumping.
No,
Um,
that was what Fiona was asking for. So no, that's great. Great. So let's go ahead and take the call in the UK. We have May, she, her pronouns, asking for advice navigating disability barriers when transitioning. May, you are live on the line. How are
Hello, can you hear
you?
me?
yeah.
Yes.
Hi. So I have a lot of different disabilities, and as you can imagine, that creates some issues when trying to transition. And one, I just think it's interesting to talk about because it's not something I get to talk about a lot. But then also, I have a lot of quite specific practical. I am having this problem. I don't want to like rattle on because we'd be here forever, but I think one of the things that's impacting me at the moment is I am hard of hearing, and as a result of that, I often shout and don't realize I'm shouting, and that is not very conducive to voice training.
Mm, I
And I am
see.
quite scared to start voice training, especially not with like medical oversight, because I'm scared I'm just going to wreck my voice because I don't even know I'm shouting.
I see.
Okay.
I mean, there are various other things as well, but like I don't want to like just go on and on about 25 different ways that I'm struggling.
No,
Fair.
I totally understand. Um, Jack, do you want to start on this?
I mean, I am gonna be of limited utility here, largely because I haven't done any formal voice training. What I did was I ran a podcast for like 10 years, and I edited that podcast, and so I had to listen to myself all the time, and I just made adjustments. um but the other thing I did was to deliberately, like when I was in my car or my shower or alone, I would just sing songs outside of my normal comfortable range for my voice. And over time, that just kind of helped mold my voice closer to what I wanted it to be. But I'm sure other folks who have gone through like more formal voice training have better feedback for you on that
Yeah.
front.
So I did do formal voice training. I was also classically trained in choir when I was in high school as well. So I have a very strong control over my voice, including my resonance. So one of the things that you may not know, a lot of voice training is actually without even making a sound at all. So when we talk about resonance over pitch, it's more important to have a resonance, and there's a lot of ways that you can probably see that you could probably look at videos on YouTube and things like that. But one of the things that is important, there are two things. First, if you ever feel pain in your voice when you're voice training, you stop and let your voice rest. Like as soon as you start feeling that ping in the back of your throat that is like starting to hurt, you're supposed to let your voice rest. That's very, very important. And you should
I
listen
have
to
heard
your
that, yeah.
body. Yeah, you got to listen to your body, right? When it says, "Oh my gosh, this is one of the things that is in pain," rest. So one of the things that you got to do, and I'm not saying you got to do this, but this is something that is very handy when you are voice training. You know, when you swallow, like you do a hard swallow and you feel like everything kind of like move up in the back of your throat. Um,
Yeah.
when you swallow, try to hold the swallow at the top when your voice moves up. So it basically moves up what you call your larynx. Your larynx is the thing that is that feeling when you swallow that moves shifts upward. What that does is it makes the back of your throat smaller. So therefore, your resonance will be much more feminine in a lot of ways. It's kind of like a violin versus a guitar, right? Like a violin has a smaller body to it, so it has a more of a nice resonance to it versus a guitar that is a little bit deeper, or a cello that's even deeper than that. So it takes a lot of practice to hold that swallow. And you should try to hold it as long as possible when you're typing. Think about holding a swallow. Like when I on my laptop, I used to have a little note that said hold the swallow. And so I would practice that always until I got tired, and then I'd let my voice rest. That was more important than the pitch. The pitch can come later. So that way you can rest your voice so you're not like making loud sounds that are going to hurt your voice. The most important part is to strengthen the muscles that push your larynx up. It's like putting it on the top shelf. That's what I like to think about it. You're just putting your larynx on the top shelf and you're just holding it there. And then eventually what happens is the muscles that lift your larynx get stronger and stronger and stronger. And now I wake up in the morning and it's automatically, I move it up automatically. So therefore my resonance is 24 hours. I can do it because I've worked at it. It took me probably 10 months to a year before I was able to go a full day. And in the beginning of my voice training, I could only feminize my voice for maybe an hour or two, and then it was like 4 hours, then it was 5 hours, then it was like a whole day. And I too also did streaming, and Jack knows me from streaming when I used to do the Love Nest on Twitch. I did streaming on purpose just so I can practice my voice more and perform myself as who I am as Josie on a stage. And I thought that was very helpful because I'm sure, Jack, I probably sound different now than I did then. And a lot of times we overcorrect early in our feminization journey for your voice, and then eventually your voice just kind of naturally falls in the range that it is. My voice is actually a little bit a lower pitch than when I started my training because it's just natural, because I like to have a little chest in my voice, so therefore I can project. And that's because I'm a politician and I need to be able to speak on a stage. And if I take all of the chest voice out, I lose a lot of the strength when I'm trying to speak and be active. So I have a lot of control over my voice. So if I really wanted to, I can be very feminine, but I lose a lot of the strength in my voice because I'm now taking out the timbre that gives my voice the ability to shoot out far. And so I brought my voice down. So now it's easier for me to project forward and project the authority that I'm trying to do. So it is a very, very long process. It's a lot of practice, and it's just how bad you want it, right? Like I know a lot of trans people like Jack who don't have the professional voice training, but also have a very, very beautiful voice that is feminized just through natural, like listening to yourself a lot on media. That way you can actually say, oh, I want to say this. I read a lot of Dr. Seuss books like when I was training my voice. Like I did. I was just like reading them out loud. Just so I can just just keep practicing the articulation of it all. But I'm a big nerd, and a lot of my dysphoria came from my voice, so that's why I know a lot about voice training. So
That makes
that's
sense.
mainly why I did it.
Yeah, I would say the same is true for me. Like I am hard of hearing. I've only very recently received hearing aids, and I've now got this thing of like, oh, I can hear my voice. I couldn't do that. I don't like the way my voice sounds. I should voice train, but I can't because I'm always shouting. So I think that makes a lot of sense, and it gives me something to do in the meantime because I am technically on the wait list to see a professional, but it's the UK. I'm going to be there for like another year because
Yeah.
the UK health system sucks. And yeah, I can definitely do that. That makes a lot of sense. I
Yeah.
guess I'm just still really, really scared of, you know, holding it for however long, knackering, get, oh, I should stop. And then, or I go and talk even just in my normal register. And, I'm shouting for 3 hours because I don't even know I'm doing it. But I guess that's not a lot I can do about that.
Yeah, and May, you got to think about this too about voice training, and I think a lot of, and this is important for anybody who's doing voice training in either direction, masculinization or feminization, is when you talk to people that you knew pre-transition, you will talk to them at a lower register naturally because that's how you've been trained to listen and be heard by that person. So sometimes, and this is what I did, I made a couple new friends that I still communicate with to this day that I really consider incredibly great friends. Her name is Josie as well, and she's awesome. I love her. But we started vocal training together. We met each other randomly on Reddit, and we would just sit there on the hours on the phone just chatting,
That's
practicing our
awesome.
feminization. And it was because we didn't know each other pre-transition. So therefore we had the ability to kind of talk to somebody newly. And that's how it eventually happens. Like when I talk to my mom or when I talk to my sister, my voice drops significantly and I don't even realize I'm doing it until I think about it. And then my voice just naturally pops up again. The human brain is a very powerful thing, and it will impede your ability to practice around people that you already know. So really, like, ordering takeout, on the phone is a really good way of talking to a complete stranger that won't remember you anyway. To practice that feminization is also very, very important as well. It's one of the reasons I did Twitch as well, because a lot of those folks didn't know me pre-transition. So it was easy for me to continue to project my voice in the way that I wanted to project it to make that happen as well. So don't be hard on yourself when you are practicing, especially if you're talking to people that you already talk to currently in the register that you do. So that's another tip that will probably help you and save you a lot of grief as well. But really, the most important part about feminization is where your lyrics is placed. And I'll say this to all the people that are thinking about masculizing your voice. Think about a yawn. When you yawn, your larynx drops deep, right down low. So you should hold the yawn if you are trying to masculinize your voice. And if you're feminizing, hold the swallow, and if you're masculizing, hold the yawn. And that will help wonders for all of you that are trying to do it, because resonance is incredibly important. So if I drop my pitch, like, so I'm trying, it sounds like I'm trying to be a boy and I'm talking real low, but my resonance is still really high, so therefore it sounds really weird and uncanny because I'm trying to pretend that I can speak as a boy. See, that's because I kept my resonance high. So regardless of how low my pitch is, because I'm naturally brought my resonance up, it's always going to sound more feminine. So I don't know. I really am a nerd and I studied a lot about this. So that's why I know a lot about this.
And one thing
I,
I would
I'm
add here is just like real quick, one thing Josie mentioned that I think might be helpful, and I just want to kind of reiterate it because I know it's helpful for me, having that level of kind of body awareness so that you can kind of check in with your voice, with where your vocal cords are at, like how you're feeling, might help with also stuff like unintentionally being loud while you're talking. Like when you start checking in more consciously with your voice, it can also help with that as well. Um, because it all
That makes
once
sense.
you like become more mindful of it, like you can feel the difference between all of the different things your vocal cords are doing. You can feel the different tension. It's weird when you start thinking about it too much, which I definitely went through a period where I was thinking about it like all the time. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
I guess I'm
it
just
helps.
Yeah.
nervous because, like, I'm autistic. You know, interoception's always hard. I've also got
Mhm.
PTSD. I'm always dissociating. So I guess I'm just scared. But the more I say this, the more I'm maybe just using it as an excuse. And, you know, in that very stereotypical way of, oh, I'll voice train later. I think I just need to do it.
Yeah, just practice. And you don't even need to make a sound to do it. Just practice your larynx. Just start raising your larynx. Hold that swallow as long as you can and just keep reminding yourself to do it. And you may not do it some days. There were some days when I didn't even do it at all because my voice was sore. And I didn't even say a word. And my voice was sore because I was working out the muscles, pushing the larynx up. And that's what it takes. It's like working out. Like you got to rest your muscles and let them grow. And that's what you got to do.
And drink plenty of water.
Yes, lots of water. Lots of water. Yep, that's right. That's right. So I hope that was helpful, May.
Very much so, thank you. And I
Yeah.
will be passing on the advice in the other direction. I know the first caller was talking about families of trans people. I have a younger sibling who is non-binary, and we are very, very close. And I know they are also trying to voice train. I'll be passing on that information.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Great.
Best of luck.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, May.
Thank you so
Have a
much.
great rest of your day, okay? All
You
right.
too.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. Well, that was a good call.
Yeah.
But I'm also like, I was like hyper. I was like info dumping. I love voice training. It's a lot of fun for me. Oh, because I also D&D, right? So I
Yeah.
can do like the fairy has anxiety as the forest is burning down, and I could be the guard at the gate. So like so for me, it's like I love doing voices, and so for me, voice training was just making me a better DM. So I was
Yeah.
just like, yeah. So yeah. Um, all right, so let's go and take Jacob, him from Ohio, voted yes on the poll and believes government should respect the will of the people. So, hello, Jacob. Welcome to the line. You are live. How are you?
I'm doing great. How about you guys?
I'm
Oh,
doing
sorry. I don't know
well.
how to operate in this world, but
No, it's
It's
fine.
all
No, you
good.
you just have to interact like a human, and that's how it
okay.
goes. So you're doing great.
Okay. Cool. Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Yeah. So,
Uh,
Jacob, tell us
yeah,
about it.
so this may get philosophical and this may get a little weird, so if I'm going too far too fast, just let me know. But I think the phrasing of the word should the state be able to, I think is the thing that I more so balked at with the vote, in that we live in a government that would suggest that we acknowledge and accept the majority vote as for moral or perceived moral issues in where we are. And so
Mhm.
when we say like the state cannot ban this, we are then overriding the state with some other normative ought that we have not yet justified. And
Mhm.
so that was more so my challenge to voting yes, is that I think they should be able to ban that, but not for the reason of it's wrong, but because we respect the majority vote. So unless I'm mistaken, we may agree on this.
So, yes and no. So there is lines that should be drawn when it comes to the ability for human rights, right? So
But
when we're talking
where are you drawing those from?
Constitution. So when you look at the US Constitution, like it's pretty clear that equality is the goal, right? You want to allow people to live and have equality. So for example, when we think about the ending of
Mm-hmm.
slavery, things like that, those were all constitutionally mandated once the Supreme Court said, "Hey, we need to follow the law here."
With
And
equality, right?
and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, when it comes to equality. So for me, when we are looking at these things, we think about the human rights of it all. So, for example, let me ask you, Jacob, for the sports issue and generally, do you believe
Mhm.
that the ability to play sports is a human right?
Yes, I would believe so.
Oh, okay. So do you believe that if you believe sports is a human right, do you think it's okay for the state to be able to say to certain people that they're not allowed to play sports?
No, that would be incorrect.
Right. So even if the will of the people said that we should limit certain people's access to sports, that would be kind of going against the will of the Constitution of wanting to promote equality and human rights across the board.
Perfect. Okay, yes, that connects the dots for me then, is that we're not appealing to anything higher, but we're appealing to, historically speaking, the foundation of the country and its position as rights. I mean, I guess the only debate then at that point would be whether playing sports is a right. That seems like a weird sentence to say. I'm not sure how to justify that in any sort of semantic, but I guess so.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess also are you making the argument, Jacob, that just an abstract idea of a country or like a state could like theoretically just do whatever it wants, or are you arguing in the context of
As
like
in, like,
America, the
we're
United
we're we're a
States?
yeah, we're like a representative, democratic, what is it called? Democratic representative or representative democracy, where we vote up the people that we think represent us, and then they pass those things through because of the stances that they take on those things, right? And so, theoretically, and again, the point of the Constitution is an excellent point to counteract this, but the point being that, if this, if the people voted up somebody that they approved of that legislation and they pass it through, then that would be something that everybody would have to respect, right? Just as much as to the chagrin of transgender people of, banning these things, it's much of the chagrin of, fundamentalist, theists, that it isn't, right? And we have to play this game together to work as a country.
I mean, I think when you have like a pretty good example of, for example, a democracy passing unjust laws in the form of like Jim Crow, and then you have like the civil rights movement, deliberately violating those laws and describing them as unjust laws in order to provoke like a social, like legal change in the country, right?
Mhm.
So like
Mhm.
yeah, a country can make any number of laws, but then we start getting into like a question of, are those laws just? Are those laws something that should be respected?
R
And I think that brings
Right,
us
and I
into like
guess,
a very
go ahead.
different
I
territory.
apologize. Mhm. I like, and I guess this is more an establishment of a country question of like, what do we believe as morally correct or incorrect, right? And this is kind of the point I was kind of going for, is that what moral system are you operating in that would suggest that, if I have a different belief on the right to play sports, would compel me to agree with you in that position? Or are you arguing more so from the American, side of this, of the Constitution and what is present in the Constitution as, as the beginning document, and then the rules that we continue to break as a country moving forward?
Yeah, and so I do like the way you're framing this because, I'm somebody who I got my political science degree with an expertise in American politics and philosophy, for example. So
Hmm.
that the
Hmm.
I love talking about the philosophy of American politics because I actually read most of the books that the founding fathers read when it came to like philosophy and what is liberty and all of the different things that exist inside it, from Hegel to Jeremy Bentham to all of the
Yep.
folks. And so when we are looking at the government and the way that the founding fathers constructed it, there's a reason why we have the checks and balances system. So we have when the system works, right? I'm going to say when it works the
Yeah.
way it's supposed to, right? The legislative would pass a law, the executive would sign that law, and then the courts can then review that law once they get sued, right? So like a
Right.
person says, hey, this is a violation of my human rights, then they have the opportunity to take it to the law of the land, which would be the Supreme Court, or the people who adjudicate the law of the land, I apologize. They would be able to then say, yes, this violates your human rights and dignity, and we now need to change the law to make sure that we actually respect that human dignity and laws. Now, we've seen throughout history this hasn't worked a lot of times. So we have the awful, Dred Scott decisions, and we've had,
Yeah.
when the Supreme Court said that you could intern Japanese people, the Supreme
Yeah.
Court has, currently saying that the president has absolute immunity. Like, we have these situations where our governmental system doesn't work, and then the will of the people then have the First Amendment right to protest their grievances to the law of the land, to then move their legislators to then enact new policy and new law to be able to change the way that we move through our governmental system. Now, this is
Right.
the thing about American politics. It's very sloppy and it's very difficult to
Absolutely.
because democracy is sloppy. It's not a perfect system. We are seeing the fruits of that currently in our American government. Like, we didn't get here overnight. It took decades for where we
Right.
are right now currently in our government, and now it's up to the people to now air their grievances and protest and make sure that we have the lawmakers change the laws to make sure that things will be followed. And
Right.
so in these situations with the school case right now currently with, just yesterday, I think it was yesterday, day before yesterday, the Supreme Court had their hearing about this particular case about trans sports. Now, I believe that they're going to rule in favor of the state's ability to ban kids from sports. And it's going to be a very, very sad day in American history yet again that we are not erring on the side of human values and the morality of what we supposed to stand for as Americans. That doesn't mean we give up, right? We have to continue to stand up and say that this is wrong, and then try to elect better leaders to enact the will of the people that will follow the letter of the Constitution more accurately to be able to get these things happening. Now, could this take a decade? Yes. Could this take 2 decades? Yes. But it doesn't mean that it won't eventually get there. So when you ask the question, where does our morality come from? Unfortunately, it comes from the will of the people to put an end to things. We literally fought a civil war to end the atrocity of slavery because the government couldn't agree on what it needed to do. And people literally picked up arms to fight for a better union. And
But
that's what we had to do.
one challenge to that though is that if the government defines our morality, then why are we challenging anything the government produces? It seems like we are valuing something higher than the government and holding the government standard to that.
I don't think human rights should be higher than the government, right? Like, wouldn't you agree with
But
that?
where do we value that then, right? Well, yeah, I absolutely agree with that. But where is that like defined? Are we
Well,
talking
it's
like, are you guys moral realists?
Well, okay, so that's a completely different conversation. So, for
I know
example,
that's
I'll
what I'm
ask
saying. I
you,
think it might get a
no,
little
no,
too
no, and I'm
it's too
okay.
much,
I'm okay with
maybe.
this, right? I love philosophy, but Jacob, I'll ask you this question: have you ever murdered anybody?
No, that's really
Why?
personal, but no, I haven't.
I know. Well, I took a risk there. I took a big risk.
What if you
That's
said
okay. Holy
yes?
smokes!
But Jacob, why?
Because that's not a world that I want to live in. If I was capable of murdering somebody for an unjustified cause, then I would be inviting a world where somebody could murder me or people I love with an
So you're
unjustified cause.
taking a
I base my
Kantian
morality
approach.
in reason. Yeah.
So it's more of a Kantian philosophy that if you do something wrong and everybody does something wrong, then that would create a terrible world.
Golden rule, platinum rule, yes.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
essentially
right,
we get
right.
the world we ask for.
the moral imperative, right? Like the categorical imperative
Hmm.
that basically Immanuel Kant kind of basically said, right? In that
Yep, you nailed it.
framework.
Hmm.
But that doesn't come from any higher power. That just comes from the social contract of of living into society, right?
Ish. I mean, can the social society contract be wrong?
It can be. Yeah, absolutely. Wars have been fought
Then we
for
would
it,
be
right?
appealing for something higher, but then we'd be appealing something higher than that.
I think that when we talk about living in a just society, if you want to go into Kant, and now I'm going to get really into philosophy here, Kant
Here
would
we go.
say that, yeah, right. Kant would say that you have the citizen self and then you have your individual self. Right.
Hmm.
Like,
Hmm.
so, the citizen self is you driving the speed limit and, making sure that you follow the laws as you walk through the society because that is your citizen self. But maybe your personal
Right.
self would love to just drive as fast as you want, drive on the sidewalks, whatever, but you don't do that, even
Right.
though it may get you there faster. But you don't do that because of your citizen self. And you could even take it a step further that if you did drive on the sidewalk and the cop stopped you and then you said put your hands out and say arrest me, your citizen self is overriding your individual self because your individual self wouldn't want to be arrested. Yet when you put your hands out saying, yeah, I did the broken the law, arrest me, you are more, your higher power is your citizen self. And most people live in society with the idea that your citizen self has higher priority than your
Right.
individual self, right? and
I'm
and
wondering if
so
there's a way we could even just shortcut this because we're
yeah,
abstracting really
of
high
course.
up and above. But I really loved your
Yes.
comment before was that we are founded on structure of the Constitution. We want equality for everybody as best as we could possibly define. And so
Yes.
if we're going to stay consistent even within the system or model, we don't need to appeal to anything higher. To the sake of like, is playing sports a right? Well, yes, any normal human being would just say that. Well, we need everybody to be free because that's our constitution and what we do. Let's just appeal to consistency. And then, I mean, I guess if you don't value consistency, you get the world you get. But I mean, I feel like that just answers the question.
Essentially, yes. And knowing that as we progress in society, things will change, right? Like there wasn't
Right.
cars in the American founding, right? There wasn't like,
Right.
the
Exactly. Hmm.
internet, there wasn't AI, right? And these are going to be societal problems that we are going to have to deal with. And we're going to have to base
Hmm.
those on the primitive brains of humans that want equality and freedom for everyone. And that's the
Right.
beauty of the Constitution. And call me a patriot, I do love the Constitution. And I
Hmm.
do believe that the Constitution should be amended by the people of the era. And we now live in a government that thinks opposite, or not the government, the people running government believe that the Constitution shouldn't be amended. We haven't amended the Constitution since the 80s. And if
Yeah.
we were able to open that up more and actually amend the Constitution based on the theoretical framework of what the founding fathers actually intended it to be, which is a document that is supposed to be governing the people of the era. And I say this
Right.
knowing that the founding fathers were all rich white slave owners that had property,
Right.
but even
Right.
they
Yeah.
knew that that was going to end eventually. I
Yeah.
honestly believe that the founding fathers knew that that game was going to end eventually, and they wrote it into the Constitution to allow people to eventually do that. But
I
it's
see.
sloppy.
Hmm.
It's a sloppy
Yeah.
system.
To kind of build off of just that idea, because I've been kind of quiet because I'm not big on philosophy. But the thing I would
It's
just
okay.
add is
Not
that
everybody has to be.
Yeah.
the thing I would just add on that is that I I conceive of this largely as a very large ongoing conversation. Like Josie was saying, we're going to progress from here, and things are going to change. And also that none of us, I mean, very few of us, I'll say, have a very clear, coherent idea of what our like bedrock philosophy and where we get our morals actually comes
Yeah.
from. Like
Hmm.
the vast majority of people aren't sitting around reading Kant, and or like trying to figure out what the utilitarian analysis of like their moral day-to-day dealings
Yeah.
is. and it's like a huge mishmash. And so like I think that there are different places where a bunch of people grab their morals from, and you can maybe generally characterize a nation as having certain ideas, but we're having one huge conversation, and I think that just like a conversation with one-on-one with someone else, like there's gonna be disagreements, there's gonna be messiness, there's gonna be, evolution to ideas from bouncing off of each other. And
Hmm.
like I think ultimately this is just my personal take. I think ultimately people
Hmm.
want to do right by their neighbors, and they want to be good to the people who they live in community with. And
Yep, I
um,
agree.
so I think, like, especially when we start interrogating issues of like, should trans girls play sports like with cis girls? Like, I
Hmm.
think that ultimately that conversation is being had, and I think ultimately the arc of that conversation is going to bend towards yes, and also that
Yeah,
perhaps we don't need the state to weigh in on that issue because we can figure it out ourselves.
Yeah. Yep. And
and
Jack, I
I
thank you for
understand
bringing
that.
that. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. And
So
and and
I
Jacob,
guess.
go
Oh,
ahead,
go ahead.
please. No, go ahead. I would like
Um,
to go ahead.
I would because I know you guys got other callers and stuff like that, but I would say that you guys have convinced me of my vote being incorrect. So thank you very much for enlightening me on at least just the contrary
Yes.
in the Constitution versus what's going on right now. So first and
Yeah.
foremost, thank you for convincing me otherwise. That was very elegantly put. Um,
Yeah.
and
Appreciate you, Jacob.
the rumors of the opposition that I have been told have been greatly exaggerated. You guys are great. Thank you so much for
Oh,
such a peaceable conversation.
Yeah,
yeah, I
thank you for
appreciate
being so
that.
delightful.
Yeah, it was a delightful call. And anytime I could talk about moral philosophy, I'm just like, yes, please, let's go, let's go. So thank
Oh
you
yeah.
for that. You intellectually stimulated me, and that makes me happy. So I appreciate
Cool.
that.
I'm
Awesome. All
glad that
right,
I could.
Jacob.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. All right, have a
Bye.
great rest of your day. Bye bye.
All right.
Yeah,
That
let me
was
talk about
fun.
American political modern thought. Oh, like that was my favorite class. My favorite class was modern political thought, and I was never so happy to get a B plus in my life. I That class was it was a hard class. But it was like it definitely hit my GPA just a teeny bit, but I was so mad because I usually make all A's and everything, but I was like, the B plus was like the top class score, and I was like, let's go. That professor was brutal, and I was like top of the class, like B plus. I'm like, yes. Yeah. It was good stuff. Good stuff. Great. So, how about the next call? We're just going right through these calls, which I love. So let's go with Andy. He, him, also from Texas, wants to talk about brain studies and scans of male and female brains.
Let's do it.
Hello, Andy. You're live on the line. Thank you for calling in. Tell us about it. What did you want to talk about?
Hi. Let's see.
Hi.
Well, I guess first of all, I'd like to say that trans people have always existed and they always will.
You're
I
here.
don't think that's
Absolutely.
up for debate at all. So, as far as brains, I'd kind of like to preface this with talking about what the Supreme Court ruling um, on this. They're working on it. I guess Alito was talking to somebody, and basically the question was um, based upon whether or not someone's actually transgender or not, and how to define that as far as their gender. Specifically, whether it's just an identity or if it's actually something that can be pointed to be able to even rule on. Was kind of the gist that I got from that interaction with Alito, and I don't remember the name of the woman that was there testifying. So I've done I've been looking around, and I kind of got down this road due to a thing called DES. I don't know if you ever heard of that. Oh, it's a hard word.
Not.
But it's real hard to pronounce.
Yeah,
It's
haven't heard
basically
about it.
it's a synthetic estrogen that was given to pregnant women. It was believed to help prevent miscarriages. It was pulled from use in this 1971 after it, real quick after it was found out that I believe 7 girls developed a specific cancer that shouldn't have been had at their particular group age or whatever, and it was determined they were all DES daughters, so they pulled it. Later on, they were looking at DES sons to determine if there was any sort of cancer risk for them, and it was found out that a large percentage, like 25% of the DES sons that were participating in this study were transgender. And 25% is a pretty big number.
It is.
For transgender numbers, considering trans are like less than 2% of the population.
Yep.
So because of that, I got looking at other studies, and they were doing lab animal studies that show that if they are able to do hormonal disruptions on lab animals, that they can actually change whether or not a male animal's brain masculinizes in the womb. So it's my understanding that chromosomes, that the blueprint, everything goes off. Later on in term, your brain masculinizes according to your chromosomes. Sometimes that doesn't happen, and your brain doesn't masculinize. Now, we can't do those studies on humans because it's considered unethical or whatever, but the animal studies show that. And then I got to looking at that I guess there was a Stanford study where they had 1,500 MRI scans, and they used an AI program that was able to identify at the 99% accuracy rate whether someone is male or female. And there are other studies with MRI studies and postmortem studies that show there are differences between men and women's brains. I mean, it's not a lot. We're talking little differences here.
So Andy, I hear what you're saying, and I appreciate you going deep into this, and I am aware of some of these studies, and I think that there's gender is complex, and so are the human brains, and even in those studies that you're discussing about brain sizes in particular, there's still a large overlap, right, of people that are it's an average, right, but it still comes out to be a bimodal curve, where some brains are still ambiguous enough on either side to kind of like, there's just no way to kind of like determine this 100%, but there is some interesting correlations that do exist. And as far as the hormone washes and things like that, we have some pretty good evidence to determine, that may have some of the correlations as well. Unfortunately, we can't get the causation yet, because it's still incredibly complex as a situation. So I guess my question to you is, how does this interact with the current debate of what we're talking about when it comes to trans people and, what is going on in the zeitgeist of trans people versus, being able to exist or be able to play sports or go to the bathroom and things like that?
Okay. I think the main thing is the big pushback against trans people is woke ideology, and it's just an identity. And that the people that don't understand that, they don't have anything to look at to say, okay, I get you. You'll hear like snide remarks like, well, I'll just identify as black. Well, no, because that's an actual physical thing that anybody with reasonable intelligence can determine whether someone's black or white. I mean, that doesn't require any extra proof. But within the transgender debate, there's nothing that can actually be pointed to for anybody to say, oh, I get it. Trans people are real because of this.
Yeah.
Because right now there's this, oh, you're making it up. I know trans people. I have gender dysphoria as well. But like, trans people aren't just wanting.
Yeah, Andy, and
people sit in therapy for years trying to make it go away. So it's not like a choice.
And I will say this too, like, and unfortunately this happened when the gay debate was happening, you know, where they were trying to find the gay gene so they could use this ability to say, look, there's a reason why people are gay, or, you know, this is a story as old as time when it comes to trying to figure out why someone is the way that they are. And so for me, the way that I look at it is, even if you brought every piece of evidence and every piece of information to somebody who is, let's just say it, bigoted and will be closed-minded on this, they'll slap the studies out of your hand and say, I don't care, they should exist. And we have to look at this reasonably in a way that there are just people out there that are disgusted just seeing a trans person in society, or they're disgusted seeing a queer person in society. Hell, some people are disgusted to see a black person walking through their neighborhood. And you know, so at the end of the day, I just feel like it's interesting. Like, I think the science of it is interesting. Like I was just having a really philosophical debate about, you know, moral philosophy earlier. I loved having conversations about the mechanisms and the studies and things like that. It's just naturally I'm inclined to find that stuff interesting. But when I think about human rights and I think about policy and I think about, like, there just isn't going to be a piece of information or a data point that is going to align with every single trans person in the world. So, like, even if we were able to say, yes, the brain study is like 99% accurate, like, let's just say that's the case, and I still am very suspect if that's the case. What about the 1%? Do they no longer have the ability to transition anymore? And that's where I start backing off of the science side of it all, because the science side of it all, even though it may be good intentions to create an argument against bigots, will just find another way to discriminate against people. I would love to hear what Jack has to say as well about this.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I like Josie, I'm fascinated by the science, right? And I am always skeptical a little bit about the findings of like brain stuff, largely because the science on that has seemed to swing wildly over the years. Because, you know, obviously as a trans person, I'm interested, so I pay attention to it. And several years ago, there was like one of the largest meta studies going over about like 30 years of different like brain sex differences findings. And what they discovered was that when you account for brain size, um, and you like kind of take that factor out of it, the differences between male and female brains are one like a 1%. Like it is almost indistinguishable in a lot of different cases. And because, as Josie mentioned, there's like this bimodal distribution of characteristics, like it gets really messy when you start diving down into like a more complicated understanding of what's happening. And you mentioned like hormone washes and stuff like that, which I, again, very interesting. But I think for the folks who need to be convinced to respect trans people, and who other like, unless there is like a science, like some kind of like concrete thing for them to hang their hat on, they refuse to do it. Something's going on with them that isn't related to like scientific evidence, um because they've already made the decision not to respect trans people. And I think for those folks, I would just make an appeal to history rather than to science itself. I think anthropology in particular is really, really interesting. Um, if you need like a resource on that, years ago, PBS put out a map of gender diverse cultures over the years and over like a long stretch of time around the world. And you can see different indigenous cultures, different on every single continent, like all parts of the world, who have had a concept of, you know, more than two different gender identities. And like it starts to really paint a picture that for human beings, gender isn't just this like male female thing. It is actually much more complicated than that, even beyond the biology. And like I think a lot of folks, for example, don't really reckon with the fact that India, for example, has had a recognized third gender for, you know, uh, thousands of years. Like it, and I think a lot of this stuff just kind of comes from people getting stuck in the mindset of where they grew up and kind of losing that curiosity to learn about people who might be different than them, and respecting those differences.
Right. Yeah, I understand all of that, but it's just the whole, it has to come from somewhere. Like you hear people say, oh, gender is a social construct. Well, if it was a social construct, and I grew up doing all the boy stuff, including U.S. Army Airborne Infantry, Ranger, dirt biking, hunting, the whole business, you name it, I've done it all. Why have I always felt like I've had a female brain? It's a construct.
Yeah.
The
Hey,
idea of me being a
I was
female
in the
gender in
Navy.
a
I
male
did the
body
whole
has to
thing.
come from somewhere.
Well,
Where?
I
Where does
mean,
it come from?
I think for a lot of folks, it can come from a bunch of different directions. Kind of we're getting into almost like a nature versus nurture argument, and the reality is like it's super complicated. Like you are not just the product of your biology, you're also the product of all of your experiences and how you've been socialized, and like those things interact with, the biology that we're born with in like incredibly complicated ways that we haven't been able to untangle yet. And so there might be differences in your case, but that might not be true of all trans people. Does that make sense?
Sure, because everybody's different because the human is
exactly.
very diverse.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think that's what the beauty of humanity is, that little bit of mystery, right? Because and I will say is like, why do some people like chocolate and some people like vanilla? It has to come from somewhere, right? Like, and you could say that about anything, but then it just becomes trite after you start doing that, right? It's like, are we gonna figure out what the flavor gene is, or where the favorite part of your brain is linked in the way the DNA sequences is to make you more predetermined to like chocolate versus vanilla? Could you imagine if we at birth, like people are like, you're a chocolate lover at birth, and people are like, no, I like vanilla though. It's not fair. Why am I forced to eat chocolate? Why do they say that I love chocolate when I don't? And in and I know I'm being a little bit absurd with the comparison of vanilla and chocolate versus gender identity, but at the end of the day, it's like, I think that there's going to be a lot of neural maps that are going to exist from here until the sun burns out on how we put one brain synapses to another and why we come up to the conclusions that we come up with. And I think that tapestry of humanity that gives the humanity that color of being able to say, we all, like, we have studies with identical twins, and they can be completely different personality wise, they can be completely different orientation wise, sometimes they align, sometimes they don't, and it's those sometimes not and sometimes is what is always going to happen with a human mind. And I
I did
think,
see something with twins here recently where it talked about how identical twins can more be trans than natal twins.
well, and again, it's still not, it's still not the rule though, right? And that's
What
what
about
I that's what
2D, 4D finger ratio with gay and trans people compared to cis people and hetero people?
and I love data too. Like, I love science and I love the data and I love all of that, but every time we can say yes, it's like 50%, 60% of the time, there's still that 40% that isn't. And I think that is what I'm trying to get to. It's the exceptions to all of these studies is what is always going to be the controversial stuff, right? Even if you were to say,
Right.
if you are twins, and even if we were like 98% of the time, if you're a twin, you're going to be queer as hell, and that's just how it is. And then that 2% of those twins that aren't are going to be like, stop thinking I'm queer, like I'm not, and then it becomes a problem again, right? And I think that's where we have to not be so rigid in our thinking, because the rigidity of it all is what's causing a lot of the issues in our society. Like we talked about at the beginning of this call, the trans population at best is probably 2%, right? And about how many trans people exist. But that 2% matters, but to the 98%, there's a lot of people in the 98% that think that 2% doesn't matter. And that is where we start having the issues. And as much as I wish that there was a magic argument that we can have around this issue, there will still be people that say, I don't care what the science says, they need to be cis no matter what. And I've even talked to some trans people that say this. Not trans people, sorry, transphobic people who say this, where if a human was able to walk into a machine and change their entire genetic makeup to be, let's say you're assigned male at birth and you go into the machine and you come out identical to a cis woman from gene to hair. Everything is completely exactly the way a cis person comes out. Those transphobic people sometimes will still say, still a man though. And they say, and what they say is it's their soul. It's like their soul is still a man. God intended them to be a man. I don't care if they walked into a machine that turned them into a cis woman. And I've talked to certain people who believe in sex gendered souls, that believe that even if we were to take some type of magic machine that would change every cell in a human body to switch it over to a cis person, they would still believe that that person is a man, even if they went into a machine that changed them at the genetic cellular level down to a cis woman. And
I would say that's probably a pretty small percentage of
you'd be
people that have such
surprised.
a hardcore belief.
You'd be
But
surprised,
there's a lot of people
Andy.
that believe in God. They have
Yeah,
daddies,
yeah,
and argue with
yeah,
that.
yeah. And Andy,
I think
and that's because you have, and Andy, this is because you have reason in your mind. You're a reasonable person and you use reason and data and science to help you come up to your conclusions. Your epistemology and how you come up to what is true is much more refined than someone who doesn't believe in that way. And there's a lot more people, unfortunately, that don't use reason as a tool of epistemology of how they come to what is true than there isn't. And I don't want to speak for Jack here, but myself, I am stunned by the amount of people who are completely ignorant to my existence and believe that their point of view and their world is the way that the world should be. And that's why I just don't buy any argument that some people may be able to make that will change somebody's mind in certain ways, because their belief is not rooted in reason and fact. Their belief is based in feeling and emotion. And that is where we always come to an impasse with folks. And so that's why I
right. I
always say
think
the
that's
studies
where
are interesting.
I think that the whole belief and feelings thing, because you hear that from the right a lot, that facts over feelings, is that this is the where it really gets into the whole trans debate, specifically around sports, because that's what is being talked about now, is the identity or the feeling that someone is, rather than having some sort of concrete thing to look at.
Yeah.
And until we be less rigid about the studies and the science and the brain and the fact that we probably know more about the bottom of the ocean than we do about the brain, there's so much to learn that
Absolutely.
we can't rule things out at this point in time. And I don't think that this, like you talked earlier about, it could be decades before this gets sorted out, because it could take decades to sort it out. I don't necessarily think that we're going to come up with a solution anytime soon until there is something definitive.
And go ahead, Jack, go please.
I was just going to add, there are so many unknowns in the conversation, and I agree there are a lot of those unknowns aren't going to be sorted out for many years or decades to come. But like, one of the known things that we have, and why a lot of trans folks defer to identity, is because we can know how people wish to identify, because they can tell us, and we can just believe them when they tell us that they want to identify in a certain way, and then we can treat them accordingly. And I think that that's a pretty important bedrock for gender identity in particular. And when we start talking about sports and how that works, um, sports have had rules that are attached to different like biological markers for a long time. Like for example, weight class. It's a pretty obvious marker for how sports have been divided in the past, and currently even. But also like I think Josie, we've already talked today about like how that as a policy can start getting really, really messy when the state intervenes. And so when it comes to like trans folks, the general rule of thumb has always been, and I've looked at the studies about this, like 1 to 2 years on HRT generally brings some level of competitional parity, in addition to just identifying. And like I don't see why the state needs to really get involved in any of that when the sports were managing just fine on their own prior to state intervention.
Yeah, I heard a stat not too long ago. I don't know if you guys can confirm it, but it was basically, I don't remember the exact numbers, but like since 2003, there's been X number of Olympic Games with 30,000 women, and there's been 3,000 medals handed out, and not one single trans woman got a medal.
That's right.
Yep.
That's right. And even those facts, Andy, will not convince somebody who wants trans women to not participate. And
Yeah, I think
so go ahead.
I think one of the big things that we're probably up against is a millennia of human instinct. Because pronouns aside, the human brain can look at somebody and determine, unless we're talking about, a very small percentage of people that it's pretty ambiguous, and can look at somebody and say, I'm talking to a man or I'm talking to a woman. And it is basically that internal instinct to know who you're talking about just for survival. Because like as a dude presenting, even I would change how I talk to a group of dudes versus how I would talk to a group of girls, just based upon safety and security reasons. And it's just something that's in the mind.
But Andy, I would posit that that's actually socially learned, right? That's more than just like this isn't necessarily primitive, right? This is about societal training and learning, right? A group of
Sure,
women
testosterone's a hell of a drug.
well, I mean, yeah, but if you're a woman walking down the street, trans or not, and late at night, and there's a big man walking toward you, you're gonna go to the other side of the street sometimes because you don't know, because we've been socially trained to understand the stories of the other women that we know that have had the bad situations and bad experiences. So like if the world was different and that never happened, then I don't think that women would be trained to do such a thing. And again, it's just learned behavior. So Andy, you talked about something that I identified with. Somebody who I myself was in the military. I was, amateur bodybuilder in the military and everything. Like I was a very large person. I fought jiu-jitsu. I learned football stats. I knew every quarterback on every sports team. I drank beer. Guess what? I hated all that stuff. But I socially trained myself to like all of that stuff, to pretend I liked all that stuff. So that way I wouldn't be clocked in the society that, hey, what's wrong with this guy? He's acting like a woman. And I literally put on a disguise. So therefore I could socialize with these situations. That has nothing to do with my internal instincts. That's me living in a social construction. right? And so that's when I think about, like, we are trained in society to have these social constructions. If you think about before pan-Europeanism and whiteness, that was, and colonization across the world, before there really wasn't a gender category that was so strict. It was people just lived their lives, and that's how it was. And people kind of just fell into the categories of who they were in society. It wasn't until the strict adherence of pan-Europeanism and colonialism and whiteness that started to bring dresses and suits to men and women in other territories. They used to call black people and Asian people genderless mongoloids. They just did not believe that a person could be civilized without the social construction of the gender norms that they understood them to be. And now we are living with the consequences of that being pushed on our society for a millennia. And now we are starting to deconstruct that in society. And that's where I think a lot of the trans debate starting to happen, is that we, like you said at the beginning of this call, trans people have existed since the beginning of humanity. And it's only till recently that people are starting to go back to their roots of this gender construction thing's a little BS. Why do I have to live in this construct? And now we're starting to have these gender debates because of the fact that people are just saying, hey, this is how I am. This is who I am. The same thing with queerness, the same thing with people liking chocolate versus vanilla, like people being left-handed versus right-handed. It's just who we are as people. And I think people have learned in our society, current and modern day, to be able to express themselves on who they are rather than having to mask and lie to society to fit in or not be called a witch and then burned at the stake because you're writing with the left hand instead of the right. Like this is the evolution of society, but it's also a deconstruction of what was put onto our society as well. And again, I don't know, I'm feeling very philosophical this show today, but that's kind of the way that I think we are at this point. And I think we just have to convince people that it's okay to identify the way that we identify, regardless of what the science says, regardless of what the studies say, regardless of all these things. We know trans people exist, so people should have the rights to exist. And again, that's kind of my point of view, because I take a very social political view of gender versus someone who takes a very biological essentialist point of view of gender. And so that's kind of the way that I kind of move through the world. And my goal is to make sure everybody has the right to live with dignity and respect, with the human rights that every human should be afforded. And that, I think, is where I kind of land on this fight. And I think you're right. It's going to take a long time for people to accept it, just like it took a long time for people to accept that gay people have the right to live in society at all levels as well.
And I just want to add real quick on there, like I think to kind of bolster Josie's point about social conditioning, um, your frame of reference really depends on like where you grew up. Like there again, one of my go-to references here is India, where they have a history going back. You if you open up the Kama Sutra, which is around 2,000 years old, that text, you find references to Hijra, the third gender that is in India. And like those people have existed for a very long time. And I don't necessarily know that, you know, in that context, people are going like, man, woman, man, woman, because they have a different social condition there where there's also a third category that is just widely accepted. And, for us in America, folks more in the more recent years are being more comfortable identifying as non-binary. And like that is becoming more acceptable here in the United States. And so like I think the idea that we have like this biological ability to almost preternaturally sense who is man, who is woman. I think that starts to break down when you start looking at kind of humans on a wider scale than just our immediate context. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, just to me, it's just confusing because it's not like I was taught or learned or tricked or anything, the idea of having a female brain is something beyond me.
Yeah.
Like I have no control over it. It's like
Yeah.
I don't believe in Sky Daddy. It's like there's
Yeah.
something, that I've been fighting against, but it won't go away. So there has to be some sort of root cause to it. And just like, you know, Josie is talking about military, yeah, I'm ex-U.S. Army Ranger. I did it all.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like I wasn't born in India. I was born in super rural, conservative, small town Ohio. So it's not like I learned I didn't actually learn any of the vocabulary until a couple years ago. So to even be like, oh crap.
Andy, you sound like me. I hate to say it, like you sound like me when I was starting to come to the reality that I was a trans girl the whole time. Like at 8 years old, I knew I wanted to be a girl, but I pushed that down because I was also raised in conservative Texas myself, rural, small town, conservative Texas, where I didn't get the language and understanding that, hey, like I can live the way I want to live. I was forced into a box. If I was forced into a box so much that I joined the military to prove how manly I was, right? Like that is a very real thing, and it's something that you should think about, because I remember when I first started coming out as trans, or at least I started to, because I think it's no secret that I am a nerd and I like to study and I like to just like figure out why things are the way they are. And I realized very quickly it was a fool's errand to figure out why that I feel like I needed to be a woman the whole time. There was just nothing I can do other than the fact of say, well, I guess this is just the way it is, and live that truth of who I was. And I'm a much happier person for it. I used to be a very depressed, sad individual. And it wasn't until I gave myself permission to say, this is who I am. And it wasn't an easy process. I lost a large number of my families. I lost friends. I lost career opportunities. There was a lot of things that didn't go well when I lived my truth. But even with all of that, I still felt better as a person, and the depression went away. And that was how it worked for me. That's my story. That's my truth. It's different for everybody. But for me, that's what helped me do it, because I gave up trying to understand and just started living who I am. And you can I was driving myself mad trying to figure out why. And in fact, I tried to figure out why for 4 years, because at 30 years old, I had a pretty good idea. Like I even learned voice training. I know we had this early in the call. At 30 years old, I was watching voice training videos, even though I was like still cis though, just in case. I'm just learning this just because it's just a fun thing to learn. And I did that all the way until age 34. And that was the moment that I was just like, I can't do it anymore. I just have to be who I am. And that was a much easier step for me than trying to understand the mechanism that made me a woman, because I just am, and that's just how it is. And cis people,
Right.
Andy, don't think about this as much as people who think about the fact the way you're putting it as I have a female brain and a male body. That's how you put it into your words. Like cis people don't think like that. Cis people don't think, am I a man? Am I a man? Or am I a normal man? They don't think that way. They just are. Same thing with cis women. They just are. They don't even have the concept of thinking otherwise. Maybe a cis person may think a couple times in their life, oh, what if would it be like if I was a girl? But it's just a fun thought experiment. It isn't a what if I was actually a woman and happy? Like, that's a very different conversation than a cis person has. And
Right.
so I just I you know I just I hope you just think about that, Andy, because you will spin out, because I spinned out on the concept and the idea of why I felt the way that I am, and there has to be some biological way why. Believe me, Andy, I have been in that rabbit hole studying the brain sizes, studying hormone washes, studying why, and how often does this happen? How many people after the age of 25 think this way? Like I used to think it all. There was a moment when I was like, "Oh, I'm too old for this. I can't do it." There was even that crossed in my mind at one point. And then I realized that that was just another coping mechanism to try to force myself to think that it wasn't what it was. And so I'm not trying to say this is who you are, but I am saying that I had the same type of struggle that you were struggling with when it comes to the reasons why. And unfortunately, there is no concrete reason why. Just like your favorite food is the way that it is. There's no concrete reason why. It's just
I,
is.
this is why it's so hard, because you're talking about the spin out with the whole all female brain in a male body, which many trans women go through and wrestle with.
Hmm.
And that's the whole concept that the cis people, if the trans people can't even come to a conclusion to figure it out, the cis people are never going to understand, and you're just going to constantly get pushback on trans women in sports.
That's right.
Because
But you know what? We deal with it.
We're talking about sports. I think we need to back it up a little bit off of sports and just be like, let's just get some validity here, and then we'll worry
Yeah.
about sports.
Well, I mean, there's plenty of validity. Like there's like it is a scientific fact that trans people exist, you know? And like I think everyone who has struggled with their gender identity goes through a period where they are, why am I this way? Why am I this way? And in the same way that we're not necessarily going to have the why to every major scientific question about, how different celestial bodies function or different particles that pop in and out of existence in quantum mechanics. Maybe we'll figure it out, maybe we won't, but we won't necessarily know why. It just is, right? And in a similar way, trans people are like we exist, we're real, we're here, and like that's an indisputable fact. And so when the question is, well, why are trans people? And the answer is of like a million complicated reasons that go into that, that we may or may not ever be able to untangle. And the reasons why someone might identify differently are different from person to person. Um, that becomes like this impossible knot to untangle. And again, when it comes to the question of should trans girls be allowed to play in sports against cis girls, I don't think it's necessarily the most material question. Like why do those trans girls exist? I don't know, but they do. And should they be able to play sports? I think so. And like ultimately where each individual comes down on what combination of factors resulted in them identifying in a certain way, um like it's fine. Like whatever
Yeah.
answer you come up with for why your brain is the way it is, like okay, go, like that's great.
Yep.
That might not be true of every other trans person though,
Yep.
and we kind of have to make our peace with that at some point. Like
Yep. And my life was so much easier once I just let it go and just like, yep, I'm Josie. That's how it goes. And once I was able to do that and I breathe out that sigh of like acceptance, it was the my mind stopped spinning once I started walking down that path.
and I will just say also, like I come from a similar background. I didn't wind up joining the military, but I grew up in a Christian fundamentalist household. Like my dad doesn't believe in evolution. Like I had like a pretty sheltered upbringing from a lot of LGBTQ people, and my only exposure to trans people was on like daytime television shows. So my concept of trans people was like people who beat each other up on Maori, or on the Jerry Springer show, or like are brought on as like almost like zoo animals on the Maori show, and like
Yeah,
that
trans
was my
people
concept.
came with a laugh track attached to them.
Yep.
Yeah,
That's right.
exactly. And
That's
so
right.
when I started being able to articulate my gender identity, I was like, well, I'm not like those people, so I couldn't possibly be trans. And so I spent like a decade trying to figure out why am I this way? Like what like are and I eventually came to the conclusion trans people are great, but I couldn't possibly be trans. And I did every mental gymnastic trick that I could do to try and avoid having that realization. And ultimately I got to a point that I think a lot of trans people get to, which is that like I was like, well, I either transition or I like I can't continue this way.
Yeah.
And because we understand due to our social conditioning what the costs are. You know, it's why it's so scary to like come
Yeah.
out as trans.
Yeah.
And like those costs, the way our society judges us, that's not connected to what our brain chemistry is or the structure inside of our brains. It's connected to how our society has like an unfair bigotry towards trans folks, and a desire to make us conform, with innumerable numbers of ways of pressuring us, physically, mentally, socially, etc. And because I was never talked about by my parents about trans people. I didn't have the language, but I knew implicitly that it was not okay to act outside of like the gender role that I had been assigned. And that education I think is something that we all get pretty deeply in America.
Absolutely. Well, Andy,
Yeah, I think the
I hope this
hang
was
up, hang up
nice.
on me. There's probably people on the line, right?
Yes, yes. Unfortunately, we do have to move on, but I hope that this conversation was helpful. And please forgive me if I saw a lot of myself in you. It's just kind of natural for me to feel that because, I care for you and I care about the feelings that you're having. And as somebody who loves facts and knowledge and science, it's a very strong rabbit hole that you can fall down that only makes you more anxious. So just be careful, okay? Take care of yourself. Be safe, all right?
Sure thing.
Yeah.
All
All
right,
right.
bye.
Bye, Andy.
Bye.
Oh my gosh.
I felt really
I
strongly about that one.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I know exactly the rabbit hole that Andy's in right now.
Yeah.
I've been there so deeply for so many years. I don't know how I survived, honestly, with the amount of anxiety I gave myself just trying to
Oh.
find the answer, like
Oh.
finding the magic bullet, just being like, what is the thing? Just let me be explained, please.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like because I feel like for me it came from a place of like if I can explain it, then I can do something to avoid it.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
conclusion.
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
I feel that. I feel that. So if you haven't liked and subscribed, please do that. We are literally 10,000 people away from 200,000 subscribers.
Ooh.
And then Jimmy can put another trophy on his wall, I think. I think that's what I think that he's the one that keeps them all. Why can't we should be able to pass around the YouTube plaque, and every host should have it and babysit it. Kind of like, like the class pet. It's like you get the class pet for a week, and then
Yeah.
I want the YouTube plaque on my wall for a little bit. That'd be
Yeah,
fun.
put some googly eyes on it and give it a name.
Yeah, exactly. Give it a name, That would be nice. That would be nice. And then Jack, you'll be last in the line to
Of
get it.
course, of course.
But you will eventually get it, I'm sure, if we were to do it. But honestly, who are we kidding ourselves? Jimmy's keeping it for himself. That's just that's how it goes.
Yeah, the first time Jimmy hands it off, someone drops it and breaks it. Like,
Yeah.
oh no, you broke the class pet.
Oh no. And secretly it's not actually broken, and it's just secretly on somebody's wall forevermore. And That's how it goes. Yeah, so please like and subscribe. There are also, if you're not a Patreon subscriber, please do that. There's exclusive content that you can get. We do the line cons on the weekends every now and then, where you get to see the host and have a special little show that you get to have, and you also get exclusive merch sometimes that exists for a short period of time. So yeah, if you really want to be one of the cool kids, become a Patreon subscriber. That's very important. Also, I'm actually going to be doing a call in it. I'm sorry, not calling it now. That's not what I'm doing. I'm doing Cus I Wanna with Forrest on Saturday as well, on the 17th. So that's going to be exciting and a lot of fun. We're gonna have some good times having the most unhinged callers,
Heck yeah.
which is always a good time. It's always a good time. Um, Also want to say, if you do a super chat of $5 or more, with hashtag Team Josie or hashtag what do you prefer? Hashtag Team Jack, hashtag Team River, or you want to make them do the work and say hashtag Riverboat Jack, and that's the only way it works?
I hashtag Jack I think
Or
works.
hashtag Team Jack.
Team Jack, yes.
Yes. Okay. Hashtag Team Jack. That way, we will be able to count your votes for the challenge. And I don't know, Jack, if you're familiar with that little end of the show challenge, but yes,
Yes.
if you lose the challenge, then you have to defend one of these three topics that the chat has to vote on, and the chat topics are: keeping plants makes you gay, bottoms get secret service detail, and gender acquired by Coliseum duels. Yeah, honestly, I think tops deserve secret service detail because there's already too many bottoms. I think maybe thinning out the herd would be good, so tops are precious. And so
That's precisely
anyways,
why they need a Secret Service detail, because people like you want to thin the herd.
Also, let's be real. The tops can fend for themselves. Like
that's true.
yeah.
That's
Yeah.
true. The strong must protect the sweet. That's how it works.
Yeah. I already know my arguments for all of these points. I'm so excited if I lose.
Oh, okay. Fair enough. Great. So, we will take, I think, the last call of the day, and then we'll go on to super chat. So, Jack, are you ready for the last call?
Let's do it.
All right. We are going to be bringing on Alan, and from Canada is agender and has a question about the schema-based definition on gender. Hello, Alan. How are you?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
We can hear you. You are live on the line.
Am I coming through all right?
Yes, you are. It's crystal clear.
Perfect. All right. Hi, Josie. Hi, Jack. So I had questions regarding like the definition of like gender, and I was wondering like what do you guys like? How do you guys define gender basically?
I personally I break gender down into multiple different like aspects. Like there's gender identity, like what you identify as, gender roles, kind of how you perform that identity, gender expression, how you like choose to present yourself in that identity. And so like I kind of break it down into subcategories to make it more digestible and have like more targeted conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And my sense of gender is very similar as well, about the internal sense of gender within the social construct of what we in society say gender is. So the schema definition, as you said, is basically like I know what my gender is, and going to what Jack was saying about expression as well. I've never heard the gender performance basis roles though. That's an interesting one. I do like the nuance that you added to that, Jack. But essentially, like when I think of my gender as a woman, I really do think back of like my mother, my sisters, and my grandmother, and all the women in my life, and how they uh the women that they are in my life really helped inform me of the woman that I am in my life, and I think that's very common for a lot of people who adopt a sense of gender, is the idea that my whole outlook is based on the people I find close, or people I admire even, right? Like people in public life, and icons, and all of these humans that embody the understanding of their own gender helped inform me of the gender that I am. Even though my gender is my own and I make it my own, I still look up to other women to help inform who I am as a person, as I developed and grew as a human being. It's complex, but that's kind of how I view my gender and how it shows up.
Hmm, okay. Um,
How about you,
so
Alan?
like just to, yeah, I was gonna say like yeah, like I don't know if I have an actual definition just yet. I think like in my head, I think of it like genders are like kind of like clubs, right? Like that's sort of like what I think of it as. Um,
Hmm.
I don't know how like you would really, because like it's like um you can identify as if you're part of the club, but also like you have to get like accepted into the club too. So like I don't know if like it makes sense to you guys, like the way I think of it.
Hmm. Hmm. And it's interesting because you also said you're agender, so maybe I asked you an unfair
Exactly. Yes.
question. Right? And
Hmm.
it's like asking an asexual person or an ace person what is love in a romantic, intimate sense, right? Like it would be something that's very interesting of like, to try to say, so what is a marriage and love that has intimacy and all of that? That would be kind of a weird question to ask a person that was like ace, for example. So
Hmm.
I do find it interesting that you look at it as like a club, and I think that's a very interesting way to view it.
I think
Jack.
I think that like no, I think it makes like a lot of sense to me because clubs are also socially constructed.
Yeah.
Like
Well, that's what I was going
to
for. Yeah.
yeah, to me like it's essentially the same things. Like you're building essentially this group identity around a certain set of characteristics or ideas about how people in the group should act, and like essentially that's kind of how I view what our concepts of gender identity even are. um
Mhm.
like I liked Josie put it in a more, I think, poetic way, like kind of like inheriting like the idea of womanhood from the women in your life. I There's almost something romantic to that I like. um
Well, oh, sorry. Go ahead.
oh no, go for it.
I was just gonna say, like, yeah, the idea Josie brought up is actually really cool, but like, it's also like, from my point of view, like the club thing, I would say that's like the legacy of the club, and like sometimes you'd want to like contribute to that club history and stuff like that, you know?
Yeah, I think yeah, no, that I think that really makes sense. Like if you bring it to like a sports analogy almost, like, oh, well, the people in my family always rooted for, the Minnesota Vikings, play the world's smallest, violin for us. But, like my concept of what a Vikings fan would be would then be heavily informed by the people in my life who are Vikings fans. But then I would be aware that there is a much larger portion of the club who, are Vikings fans as well, that exist beyond what I immediately know as to be Vikings fans for me personally. And so I think it's a fair analogy.
Mhm. Um, yeah, well, I guess I can't ask you the questions that I was gonna ask about the schema-based ones because neither of you like
Sure.
use that definition. So
Yeah, go for it.
um, yeah, I guess I could just say a couple things on the sports thing that you guys were talking about earlier.
Mhm.
Hmm.
I feel like I don't understand why we don't like try to like push towards a like biometrics basically based like categorization for or not categorization but like teaming up or like divvying up the people the athletes because like we already know like based on studies that like oh they say arm length is better for boxers or leg length is better for runners stuff like that so like it feels like those kinds of like biomarkers could be a very easy way to like make leagues so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, I was saying earlier on the show, like, weight class is like a typical go-to in a lot of sports for ways of divvying up different leagues, and I don't necessarily see that there's a compelling reason we couldn't do that, do what you're suggesting. And the main hurdle to getting to that is that I think that there's still like this very heteronormative idea of
Oh, for sure.
gender and sexuality that then like informs sports and like a lot of misogyny also informs a lot of sports segregation around gender and so I think that like I personally think that it would be preferable if we took like we had different height leagues, or different, figured out a different way that seems a bit more equitable and isn't just like, well, you're a man, so you're in a different league arbitrarily because we think you have an unfair advantage compared to any woman. And like I
Yeah.
think that I agree with you. I think working towards that would
Mhm.
probably be a better world for all of us. But I also think that the majority of our society is going to need to be baby stepped towards that point if we're to get there at all.
Definitely.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I'll also add to like and I know my opinion, maybe the minority opinion on the show is essentially I do believe that testosterone does help like retain muscle a little bit easier. So in particular ways they can do that. But if you are measuring for height and all of those type of things, I think like that is also an effective way. And I think what Jack said was perfectly is baby steps to getting there to be able to do it. Because we got to
Mhm.
realize that the gender segregation of sports comes from the fact that men didn't want to be freaking embarrassed on the freaking floor of a wrestling match because they get bodied by a woman that is like not even half that's half their size. It's about protecting the masculine ego of not having women come up and beat them in a playoff or in not a tryout. That's what I mean. Like it's like, oh my gosh, I didn't make the team, but the woman did. What does that say about my masculinity? So a lot of that does happen, and I think that was probably where I think a lot of the segregation came from. And I believe at first it's like, yeah, let the girl play, and then she starts winning. They're like, don't let the girl play, like and it was like it was probably like that at the beginning. And so I think that if we start doing it based in the understanding that sports is inherently not a fair thing, that's what makes sports exciting, is when you see an underdog beat somebody that is supposed to have the advantage. That's what makes sports exciting. Because if sports was always the taller person wins, then that wouldn't be a lot of fun, would it? Like it would be like, oh man, that's not any fun. Why are we watching the sport? Like if the same football team won every year, every time, every Super Bowl, again, it wouldn't be fun. It'd be like, this is just boring. We already know who the winner is going to be. And so I think that there's a lot of power in the inequities of sports. That's what makes the Cinderella story of like somebody beating all odds. Um, and I think when we talk about like testosterone versus not having testosterone, that's the only time, if you squint, and I say if you squint, you could say that there is some type of thing there. But even if you were to match it with testosterone or estrogen, whatever, however you want to look at the biomarker in that, once that's removed from the equation, then all the advantages seem to fall away. I know because I've been transitioned medically now for almost 6 years, and believe me, I am not same strength that I used to have. Like, I'm not even close. So something happened. I feel it. Something exists in my body that made me not as powerful or fast as I used to be. But maybe that's age.
Mhm.
I don't know. It's maybe because I'm just an old lady now, and that's just how it goes.
Ah.
Yeah,
Don't put yourself down. Don't put yourself down.
yeah. But you know, so I think that the sports leagues should be the ones making these determinations. And it shouldn't be blanket government interference that should be making these determinations. I think if the sports leagues make the choice, and sports leagues were doing it based on testosterone for a long time, it's only till recently that this has become an issue. Is where we are. And then you also have the controversies in the Olympics where, you know, they haven't let black women athletes that have too much testosterone in their blood perform. So therefore now we're dealing with another issue. So I feel like the regulations of the people who are athletes and the professionals that do the sport should be the ones that make the ultimate determinations. Are they always going to get it right? No, they're not. But I think that we will edge closer to wherever the point of the place is supposed to be. But we cannot put it in the politicians' hands. And I say that as a politician. I say that as somebody who
Mhm.
wants to govern. I don't want the power to be able to say a certain class of people can participate in any such thing. I don't want to have that type of power to tell a medical doctor what they can and cannot do based on their medical understanding. I don't want to like it's just like you know, call me crazy, but I don't want big
Mhm.
government. I want government that works for people.
And
I mean,
I
yeah, I
would
can.
just add. Oh,
Oh, go ahead.
sorry. I guess I would just add that um, one of the advantages of baby stepping it is that we can change our approach to slowly get closer to where we might ideally want to be, and we can get new information as we go. And
Mhm.
if we find out something just like absolutely doesn't work, we can change course. Um, and so I think, yeah, I just wanted to add that in there.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot to agree with there. Yeah, definitely like the incrementalism approach. Like, yeah, you can, you know, do like incremental approaches, see what works better, what doesn't work better, and yeah, that's definitely better in terms of society building. Um, and yeah, I mean, I'm an anarchist myself, so I do agree with leaving stuff up to citizens for the most part. Yeah, it's definitely like a great like idea to have, or at least principle. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Alan, I'm sorry that we're gonna have to move on to get to super chats. I do
Not at all.
have
Not at
a
all.
I have to go to an
It's
event
been fun.
after
Thank you.
this. But yeah, I really appreciate you so much. And
Yeah.
yeah, call in again if you have any other questions. Appreciate you.
For sure. For sure.
All
Have a nice
right.
day, guys.
Bye-bye. You too.
Bye.
Bye. All right. So, Jack, this is your first official line host show. How do you feel?
It feels pretty good. I had a
Yeah.
lot of fun. A lot less pugilistic than I was expecting this time around. We didn't get we got a bunch of like just really good eggs. Like a lot
Yeah.
of no pun intended. That was just that was
Ah!
genuinely an
We did get a good
expression.
egg.
I didn't mean it that okay, but like a bunch of really like just fine and fantastic folks. I had a really good time talking with just like some lovely people.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. So I'll go ahead and start. 5 pounds from Mystic Mind Analysis. Can Riverboat Jack confirm the act of transing people through steamboat river trips down the U.S. rivers? Hashtag Team Steamboat Jack.
Look, I can neither confirm nor deny the claims that there may or may not be a trans themed riverboat coming through and transing all of the folks who come aboard to gamble and carouse. I can't confirm or deny it.
I mean, you do live in a state with quite a few lakes, so
It's
uh,
true.
you know,
True.
so I'm sure there's plenty of steamboats rolling on through. Yeah.
Are we switching off?
Yeah, we switch
Okay.
off.
Thank you for the $5 from Joshua Everett 9887. I feel like the right are trying to wear us out on the defensive by switching up their attack randomly. They don't even know what they hate. Hashtag Team Jack. And agreed. You know, like
Yeah.
they are trying to overwhelm us as a point of like strategy.
Yep, absolutely. $5. Oh my gosh, there's literally a fire alarm going off.
Oh no.
I
Are you
I
okay?
I am okay. I could just deny it and just keep going. But that would be really frustrating. So I'm gonna keep going.
If you need to go
I
check it
don't.
out,
Yeah.
that's fine. Jack can read
It's a
the rest of these
Yeah,
until you're
I
back.
do
know,
have
but
an
then-
English degree. I can read.
You can read. And these fire alarms are incredibly annoying. So, and my partner is calling me saying we should probably leave the apartment. So,
Okay. Yeah.
I guess I'm gonna have to quit the show early, which
Okay.
is frustrating. So even though you were winning, I will win at the end. I just feel it. I feel that Team Josie is there.
Yeah, just assume it.
Just assume that's what I'm
Yeah.
gonna do. And also, if you haven't donated to my campaign, please do that. I have a big fundraising deadline coming up on the 21st for reporting, so please do
Give
that.
us a good pose before you click out, Josie, because it's gonna freeze on that.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna do it. Ready?
All right. I'm so sorry
Oh,
that you're
that was
all
a
on
great
your own
pose.
for your.
That was a great pose to freeze on.
It is a really good pose. I'm so
Yeah.
sorry that you have to do the questions all by yourself. For I guess
Oh, it's fine.
it's not much of a punishment when the well we'll see. Well, maybe we'll make Josie do an extra one if she loses this one. So
Yeah. All right. I'll keep us moving along here, and I hope Josie's safe. Thank you for the $5. Space Barbarian 3484. Are we great yet? Oh. You know, I don't think we're great yet. I think that's an ongoing struggle. Thank you for the $5 from Joshua Everett 9887. Senator Mayonnaise, in order for me to impugn one's character, one must have a character to impugn. Hashtag Team Josie. Indeed. Senator Mayonnaise, always on the wrong side of history. Thank you for the $4.99, Bramley CX, and I do apologize if I mess up anybody's username. Seattle Voice Labs for voice training. Hashtag Team Josie. Yeah, I've heard good things about Seattle Voice Labs. Like, actually, despite the fact that I don't live in Seattle. Thank you for the $5. Legally Mod. The UNHRC says trans girls and women have the human right to compete on girls / women's teams. Human rights are supposed to be non-negotiable. True. A W for the UNHRC. Thank you for the $5, Joshua Everett 9887. The only imperative is to just be as kind as possible whenever possible. The second philosophy overtakes well-being. It becomes a net harm. Hashtag Team Josie. Well said. I like that. Thank you for the £5, Barbara Barrett 07. Take my money. Hashtag Team Jack. Hell yeah. Oh god, we're neck and neck. Thank you for the $10 from Empress Lizard 81. I had to listen to a Fox pundit crash out over the word cis last night. Tried to get my dad to watch this show today to counteract it. He refused, so take my money instead. Hashtag Team Josie. Hashtag Team Jack. Wait, can they double vote?
no, it just cancels out.
Ooh, okay. God, there's nothing funnier than watching a Fox News pundit just absolutely have a fit over pronouns and cisness. Thank you for the $5 dono from Squirrel Knitter. Kansas HB 2426 defines gender as assigned at birth. It had a hearing in committee Tuesday. May it fail. Hashtag Team Jack. Inshallah, Squirrel Knitter. Inshallah. Thank you for the $5. Southpaw Travis T. Shimps together strong indeed. I'm seeing a lot of familiar faces in these donos. I appreciate all y'all supporting the show. Oh, thank you for the $5. Southpaw Travis T. Forgot to say hashtag Team Jack. Thank you very much. Thank you for the €5 from Dunzification. Hi, I was wondering what monster flavor the pretty person on the right was drinking. Thank you so much for your work. This is, not sponsored or anything. This is Monster Rehab, and I used to have a really bad, like, sugary energy drink addiction, and I moved over to this, and it's basically just a light lemonade with a lot of caffeine shoved into it. If you're trying to make a transition out of energy drinks, I'd recommend it. It's 25 calories as opposed to, 200 plus. So check it out. It's tasty.
I was gonna call out when you came into the Zoom chat with the Monster Energy drink. I was like, oh, that's very trans of you.
Hey, it's not the white one though. Like I'm not the most trans.
That's fair.
Someone could still become like, the top trans in chat if they pulled up with the white one. Thank you for the $5. Marceline GG, wishing everyone the strength and perseverance for the times. What a lovely gesture and thought. Thank you. Hashtag Team Riverboat Jack. Thank you for the €5 from Dunzification. I transitioned to being a woman. Is my sex still male, or does that matter? Getting censored for that word there, lol. Okay, I was wondering what was happening there. Look, a lot of people will say, no, your sex is immutable, like you were born with it, you're gonna die with it. But I think sex is more complicated than that. Like, sex exists along a bimodal spectrum, and the way I think of it is when you start taking HRT, when you start, making modifications to your body, you shift where you are on that spectrum. Like, hormones are part of how people wound up anywhere on that sex spectrum, and you are changing your literal sexual characteristics by taking HRT. So I think that there are, and beyond HRT, of course, you can move around on that spectrum via other means as well. HRT is a pretty easy go-to example. And I just think that sex categories are more complicated than just male, female, what have you. Thank you for the incredibly generous $20 from Shiloh57. I won't be able to watch until later tonight, but I had to jump in and rep Team Jack. Also, aside from building social skills in children's sports, aside from building social skills in children, sports are dumb. The real MVPs are in public service. I don't know that sports are dumb, but they're not my thing, I guess. Public service is always really cool, though. Thank you for the $5 from Mr. Boricua. 10, pronounced Boricua. Ah, god damn it. I didn't read the comment.
No,
pronounced
okay.
Boricua. Roll the R at Teensy Bit. Great show today. Welcome in, Rainbow Jack. Glad to have you here. Glad to be here. Be well, Josie. Middle arm. Indeed, indeed, indeed. Thank you for the $5 dono. Thank you for the $5 from Green Garbador. What is your favorite dinosaur or other prehistoric creature? Hashtag Team Josie. God, that is such a hard question. Because, like, anytime I learn about a new, like, prehistoric creature, I'm just like, oh, that one's lovely. Like, I always had a soft spot for Stegosaurus, but we just learned about an extinct species of woolly rhinoceros from a group of scientists who tested the DNA that they found inside of like a preserved like wolf pup's stomach from hundreds of thousands of years ago, and apparently these slightly coexisted alongside humanity for like maybe 15,000 years. before they went extinct. But like woolly rhinoceroses, so cool. Thank you for the $5 from Melatonin_ale. Name like Lady Gaga says it. Ale.
It's Ale, like Alejandra. Her name's
Oh
Alejandra, so
God.
but she
Oh,
calls it
okay.
Ale. Yeah.
Okay. That made sense. Sorry. Melatonin Ale. There we go. The the hosts have the hair combination I want for myself. Curly red hair. I'm so jelly. Ah, hell yeah. Thank you. I take I take that as a big compliment. Hashtag Team Josie. Thank you for the $5 Canadian from Chaotic Kitten 4978. Yay, Jack! So glad to see you on here. You're expanding your horizons and I love it. Hashtag Team Jack. Love to see you here, Chaotic Kitten. Hope you're doing well. And thank you for supporting the show.
Well, that is the end of the super chats, but we do have 7 more minutes to fill, which would normally be done by the punishment and a little bit of banter. But since Josie's gone, I guess I'll pipe in so we can have some banter. There are still more super chats coming in, so we'll just kind of read them as they pop up. But sorry, my brain is shutting down.
Oh, don't worry. I'm also extremely exhausted. So
Matt and I just started fostering a new puppy, and we've been it's like 90% odds we're going to adopt her at this rate. But oh my god, it is like having a newborn child. I'm definitely super tired, getting less sleep, up earlier to walk her. We're walking way more and all that good stuff. And
what kind of puppy?
She's a mixed breed. She's mostly Catahoula leopard and like some kind of retriever mix, but there's also clearly some kind of like pit bull terrier thing in there, I think. We did order a DNA test, so we'll get her fully sorted out, but she's so cute. She's the most photogenic puppy I've ever seen in my life.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, there we go. Got another one.
Oh, thank you for the $5 from Mr. Squish Daddy. Hi, I always wanted to ask, is it transphobic to be attracted to trans or gender nonconforming people? I read somewhere it's called chasing. Honestly, excellent question. And the answer is no, it's not transphobic to be attracted to trans or gender nonconforming people. The difference between just having an attraction and being a chaser is entirely in your respect for, trans people / gender nonconforming folks. The reason chasers are an issue, it's not because they're attracted to folks like us. The reason chasers are an issue is because they objectify us. We aren't people in the sense. We are a fulfillment of sexual desire devoid of humanity. And I think that I don't think there's anything transphobic about being attracted to trans folks. It's entirely in the steps you take after that that determine whether or not you are actively being transphobic while also being attracted to trans people, which is what chasers do.
Yeah,
so
100%
I hope
agree with that.
I hope that answers the question.
Yeah. Well, Josie got completely demolished, so we will have to figure out like some sort of double punishment for Josie the next time she's on to make up for this offense that she has caused to the people of the TACIS chat.
God, what a great 3 different topics though. I love for the debate, for the loser to defend.
Oh yeah, I always have fun coming up with those, and I usually do it on the spot too. Like I'll like, I have like a running list of like some that I've liked that I'll like be like, oh, this one hasn't made it yet, so I'll bring this one back. But I usually just try to think of the most absurd thing that is like somehow tangentially related to queer culture that I can come up with and see what they do. Every now and then I hit it. Sometimes they're not as good, but every now and then I'm like, okay, those slap. That's really good.
Well, I just really like the bottoms get Secret Service detail because you like that's what they want, like like the tops don't need Secret Service detail, and let's be real, the people in the Secret Service, they're going to be tops. So the bottom, this is just state
100%.
mandated tops for the bottoms. Like it's,
Oh my god, you're right.
you
Oh,
know,
see,
like
that would
it's
have been
just
good.
it's just a fulfillment of what they're looking for.
See, Chad, that's the kind of argument you missed out on when you voted for the Coliseum duels instead of bottoms getting Secret Service detail.
I also voted for Coliseum duels. Am I allowed to vote? Wait,
Oh yeah,
am I tainting
yeah,
the pool?
of
Okay,
course.
cool.
I always vote too. I'm like, oh, I know this one I think is the funniest, so I'm gonna vote for that one or whatever. But
I also really just like the bluntness of keeping plants makes you gay.
oh yeah. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, every person I've met who keeps a lot of plants is 100% at least bisexual, and so I'm
Oh,
like,
yeah.
you know, maybe it's something about the plants.
You're right, Sapphic Hazard. I'm doing the punishment. I need to stop.
That's
I need to
right.
stop.
Listen,
yeah.
it's good. It's good. We appreciate it. Well, let's here, I'll hit some announcements while we're wrapping up here, and then we'll send you guys out. I'll put Jack on full screen. Sorry. I can do the split if you prefer, but
Oh no, it's all good.
and how do I, there we go. Let me pull the scoreboard back. Yeah, so thank you so much to Jack for being here. We're super excited to see more of your face around. If you
Yeah.
would like to see more shows here on the line, this Saturday, Josie will actually be back with Forrest for a Cus I Wanna on Saturday at 6 p.m. The early Sunday show will be with Matt and Promise at 1 p.m. After Dark's going to be Forrest and Justin from the Deconstruction Zone. Monday is going to be one of our Forrest and Erica biologist, anthropologist extravaganza episodes. So if you're in for 6 to 8 hour episodes of that kind of stuff, then you will be thrilled. Tuesday on Chewed Gum, Alyssa and Taylor will be here at 6 p.m. And then Jimmy will be joining Matt on the Hang Up next Wednesday at 6 p.m. Central Time. Then Josie will be back here on TACIS next week with Dr. Ben. So make sure you go hit your notification bells on all of that stuff so you can catch those episodes. And stay tuned. Once we wrap up this show, it's going to automatically send you guys over to the Jimmy Snow channel for an episode of Calling It Now with Jimmy and Lux. So yeah, Lux, Lux, I'm so sorry, Jack. Did you want to plug any of your stuff before we wrap up and send them out here?
Yeah, folks, go check out my channel on YouTube, Riverboat Jack. Also on Twitch if you want to check that out instead. I stream most weeknights talking about politics and socialism and transness. I talk about a wide variety of issues, have good back and forths with the chat. And yeah, if I can plug any of my videos, I recently did a 3-hour-long deconstruction of Nick Shirley's bogus claims about Somali daycare fraud. So if y'all are interested, go check that out and tune in.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you all, you lovely people.
Always lovely to be here.
Ooh, wow, that music gets really loud. I need to fix that trigger so it doesn't get so loud. Yeah, go check out Jack's stuff and stick around for the next show. Thank you guys.